Good afternoon. Indeed, I'm very happy once more here. So firstly, I want to thank organizer who bring this opportunity. So thank you very much. Now here in this hall, perhaps a few thousand people, different dress, some different costume, but basically we all the same human being, physically, mentally, emotionally. And then more important, everyone have the feeling of self, I. With that, and also the feeling of pains and pleasure, also there, no differences. With that, by nature, we want joyfulness, happiness. We do not want suffering, pain. And more important, everyone have the right to achieve happy life, joyful life. Every right to overcome problem, suffering. So, the very purpose of different religious tradition, same, to lessen these suffering or problems and bring more inner peace. And even non-believer, whether they, clearly recognize or not, but by nature, non-believer also want peaceful mind, more calm mind. These days, the scientists, particularly the medical scientists, they're also suggesting us peaceful mind, calm mind. Even when they start injection, sometimes they express, be calm, be calm. Perhaps my own case, my face may show some kind of,
anxiety,
anxious or something. So maybe they advise accordingly. So in any way, the calm mind is every day, calm mind is very essential. I think two things. Calm mind brings our body element more natural balance. So your health can maintain and also improve. Blood pressure reduce, stress reduce. And then another thing, calm mind also immense helpful to function of part of our brain which usually develop the judgment, which is right, which is wrong, which is the temporary sort of the consequences and long-term consequences. So since we already have with this very unique human intelligence, so proper judgment is very, very essential. Because too much emotion, you see, I think immense are the obstacle to judge objectively. So, in order to know the reality, investigate objectively is very necessary. One of my scientist friend, one American,
Aaron Beck, the psychologist.
Or psychologist or
psychotherapist.
There's one scientist who deal many years for mental patients.
Got it. No.
Once I met in Stockholm, you see, he mentioned when we develop anger, at that moment, the object which we feel angry, that appears very negative. But actually, 90% of that negativeness is mental projection. This is exactly, Buddhist literature also mentioned that. And too much attachment to develop, the 100% sort of beautiful, 100% of positive. But there are also major portion mental projection. Like that. So, in order to know the reality, investigation is very important. Analyze about the thing is very important. In order to carry properly, calm mind is very necessary. The fuller knowledge about the reality is very, very necessary, because unless we know the reality fully, our approach often becomes unrealistic. Unrealistic method, unrealistic effort always bring unsatisfactory sort of, dissatisfactory sort of result. So therefore, in order to utilize human intelligence properly, calm mind is very necessary. So today my talk mainly is how to develop calm mind, peaceful mind. Here no differences whether believer or non-believer. Among believer, this belief or that belief, no differences. In fact, all major religious traditions, they practice such as compassion, love, forgiveness, tolerance, contentment, self-discipline. These are same. Of course, in the philosophical field, big differences. Even within the Buddhism, there's differences. Even within Sanskrit tradition, there are differences. That is necessary, because human mind, there are so many mental disposition, different mental disposition. Therefore, different way of looking, different way of thinking is necessary. So therefore, Buddha himself, taught different philosophical viewpoint towards his different sort of disciple. So therefore, differences in philosophical field, it is necessary. Obviously, world major religious tradition, two camp. One camp, theistic religion, such as Judaism, Christianity, Islam, and many other. Another camp, non-theistic, that is Jainism, Buddhism, and one part of Sankhya philosophy, no concept of creator, like that. In philosophical field, big differences, but all, carry same practice. So it is really, I think, useful. Now, for example, to some people, the concept of God, creator, is a wonderful sort of way of approach. You totally submit to God and automatically reduce the extreme self-centered attitude. You belong to God. You totally submit. So Buddhist way of sort of approach is selflessness. According to theistic religion, faith, total submission, or dedicate to God and God's creature. The same effect. Like that. So now, today's my lecture the 8 verses. You see this, except you see few point, there is something common for all major religious traditions, major religious practitioners. Usually, when we have sort of sufficient time, then few the prayers or sentences usually should be chanting. Now today, no time, so not necessary. But this hat is necessary. Strong light. Yeah. Of course, Buddhism is one of the major religion of the world and historically belongs to the East. There are, in Buddhist tradition, there are 2 traditions. One mainly based on Pali scripture. Another mainly based on Sanskrit literature, like that. And then the person, one Buddhist master, Buddhist philosopher of Nalanda institution, his name Shantarakshita, I think 8th century or 9th century, he invited by Tibetan emperor. So he introduced Buddhism in Tibet publicly. Of course, Brahma-Sambhava also at that time, same time, there, the Tibetan emperor invited. But publicly, giving teaching as a teacher and also giving Vinaya vows, he carried mainly. He himself, great philosopher, Madhyamika philosopher, his own writing, one very important text about Madhyamika philosophy he wrote, and still we use as a text. Then, in his writing, another the important text, that is Buddhist logic. Not only Buddhist logic, but at that time the existing the non-Buddhist logics also is mentioned. Very wonderful text. Quite difficult, but very, very useful. So that shows that person, that great master, Madhyamika philosopher, as well as logician. So, therefore, I usually used to describe Tibetan Buddhism is pure lineage of Nalanda tradition. So, since you see he, as a great logician, every explanation about Buddha Dharma, Buddha's teaching, combined logical investigation. So there is differences. People who get some knowledge just merely depend on the word, scripture. But Yashoda, Kijun Yashoda, Kyans Wuzmashi. That way, just they rely on word. Another style, word by word, analyze through logical process. That understanding a little deeper. And those Nalanda masters, since they use very much the analyzation, so therefore, they even use Buddha's own word, those texts which Buddha's own word, they through analytical sort of investigation. So some Buddhist text they reject. You cannot accept this literally, because this goes against with such sort of a reasoning approach. So therefore, Buddha himself, he expressed, "Oh, my follower should not accept my teaching out of devotion, out of faith, but rather investigation and experiment." So this Nalanda master is exactly he carry that sort of advice. So since 8th century, now up to now, it's a Tibetan Buddhist sort of way, more rigorous study and practice. These go together like that. So now this text, I think 11th century or 10th century, 11th century, the Atisha Divamkara, who come from then Birkamala Shila institution. Of course, Birkamala Shila institution developed later after Nalanda. So naturally, these sort of scholars or these Buddhist masters also is a follower of Nalanda tradition. So Atisha Divamkara invited one Tibetan. Then Tibet central authority already or end like that. So one small kingdom in the west part of Tibet, he invited this Atisha Divamkara. Then his disciple, I think after him, I think among his disciples, I think after 2 generations, is one good practitioner as well as scholar. His personal name, Langri Thangpa, great practitioner of altruism. So he composed this, this text. So this text, I think, 2 advantages. One advantage, of course, telling how to practice altruism in daily life, particularly when we face some complicated people, complicated person. Usually you may get irritation, but how to deal when you meet such people. And also, you see, those people who really you helped a lot, but later they against you, then according to conventional law, you have the right to countermeasure. But practitioner should not do that. You see, these things is mentioned. So these are very relevant in our day-to-day life sort of practice of altruism. And then another advantage is very short. Those books which the content marvelous, but too thick. Like me, lazy person, when saw thick book, oh, then you already feel tired. So short text, good, just 1 page is good. So now I'm going to explain briefly about 8 verses. I received the oral transmission, this text, from Rinpoche. He himself, great practitioner of altruism. Wonderful. Of course, only problem is, you see, he worshipped this controversial spirit. And because of him, I also, practice this worship, spirit worship. But then later, through a lot of investigation, then I abandoned like that. So, wonderful teacher. Now I'm going to explain through Tibetan. So, Kishi Tubden Chimba will translate. 야, 다 측제 당부 다는 심자 탐자를 이신 노블 내라고 전서 접에 선바이 다도 접은 좀 버셔스. 다 땡주 디기 당담 전주고 셈다 군주 전주고 셈니 땡기야래. 다 측 현실로는 자체를 남다 세벨람스 니 숨기야래. 디 숨야디 고불루주기 겨안디 겨고 수나시 소서도 수나시라서 담박군이 토벌 쇼서 송원의 신기 담박군이 사제 살이야 대북군이 세니 랑든 추구 담박 현주 수구 담박 담박이 되 있고 송원에 대주지 교수나고 소도 이식 소 니시 숨기야래. 어디 수나고 소 자와디 애니 전주 심차대야래. 예식 소사디 동료도 왜 나와 전도 전주 심차대야래. 그래서 진짜 인도 슝디게 어디 뒤니부터 숨겨야래. 얘네 그도 전주 심과도 개발자 전도 전주 심디 매점 시에 송샤버래.
So we will now begin reading from the text, the first stanza which reads, with a determination to achieve the highest aim, and so on. In fact, the subject matter of this text, 8 verses on mind training the mind, is really the presentation of the two bodhicitta, the two awakening minds, the ultimate awakening mind and the conventional awakening mind. In other words, the subject matter is constituted by the vast aspects of the path and the profound aspect of the path. Now, the vast aspect of the path and profound aspect of the path related to the realization of merit and wisdom, as, for example, Nagarjuna, in one of the aspirations at the end of his text, explains how when he dedicates the merit of the composition, he says that may by the virtue of composing this text, all beings, on the basis of perfecting the two accumulations of merit and wisdom, attain the highest aim, which is the embodiment of the two Buddha bodies, the form embodiment of Buddha and the wisdom embodiment of Buddha. So, and the key aspect of the practice of accumulation of merit is the cultivation of bodhicitta, the awakening mind, and the key aspect of the practice of wisdom is the cultivation of the wisdom realizing emptiness. And these two constitute the main subject matter of the text. Now, in this text, the presentation on the conventional bodhicitta, awakening mind, is more extensive, and the ultimate awakening mind is presented very briefly in the end.
Yeah. I think at the beginning it may be relevant to explain about the basic structure of Buddhism. I think, as I mentioned before, all major religion means those faith with certain sort of theology, philosophy. So that I refer major religious tradition. So all, as I mentioned before, use different method that in the part of philosophy. But the same aim to improve human good quality, human value. Here, exactly same. So different method also necessary, as I mentioned before. Now, Buddhist way of approach to improve these human good quality. Firstly, they analyze different emotions, different minds, because it is very necessary. The method to transform destructive emotion through familiarization of positive emotion. That's the only way. To extreme self-centered attitude. In order to reduce that, try to promote altruism. More sort of experience, deeper experience about altruism, the self-centered attitude decrease. Then similarly, wisdom side. Buddhist concept, the root of suffering is ignorance. So the opposite of ignorance is wisdom. So in order to remove ignorance, I think even because of the conventional level also, education, people consider education is very important. There's no question. Why? In order to have sort of happier life, successful life, knowledge is important. Because in spite of wishful thinking or desire, ignorance is the obstacle of our successful life. So the ignorance will not go away through prayer, through wish. But we need the counterforce. That's knowledge. More knowledge gain, ignorance reduce. That's the basic sort of system. So similarly, in deeper level, also, you see, the fundamental ignorance, in order to eliminate that, the awareness or understanding of fundamental reality. So that's the way. So both are part of mind. So we have to know the mental system. Like now, material development, we have to know the different matters, their nature, their component, and their effect. Two things synthesize different sort of different energy like that. So similarly, in order to change our emotion, change means destructive, harmful emotion reduce, useful emotion increase. In order to do that, we must know we must have fuller knowledge about these different emotions. And in order to know that, the systematic sort of law of causality of mind, such sort of mind comes, such sort of attitude comes, and then eventually such sort of emotion will develop. So basically those non-theistic religious sort of system is they practice according law of causality. The scientific research also they following law of causality. So exactly the inner transformation according Buddhism through law of causality, like that. So therefore, we need fuller sort of awareness about the whole structure of our mind. When we say mind, the sensorial level mind, that's very important, very powerful, but ultimately everything depends on mental level. This sensorial sort of consciousness is something like door, where the way get information. Once that information reach in central mind, then analyze the different aspect. I think this sensorial level consciousness just pick up one aspect of the object. The all different sort of aspect, different aspect of the object analyzed through what's the central mind or sixth mind, right?
Mental consciousness.
Or mental consciousness. And then also, the real creator of our experiences. Now, same object, but creates different feeling at different time or different people. The same, if that sort of experience creates independently by the object itself, then everybody who conduct that object should have same feeling. But no, even one person, the same object, conduct morning, afternoon, different. So these things, you see, mainly due to our own mental attitude. For example, when our basic mental attitude quite good, happy mood, then everything appears positive. When our mood a little bit disturbed, then everything appears negative. So these are same object, but mental attitude change. So these are not sensorial level, but mental level. So real troublemaker, not outside, but here. So now, it is quite useful to tackle these is the real troublemaker within ourselves. So here, nobody can bully. External troublemaker, sometimes, whether right or wrong, sometimes bully may be helpful. One method. So the concept of violence also is involved. There's physical action, isn't it? Physical force. Now mental troublemaker, only through wisdom. Otherwise, very difficult. Through reasoning. So therefore, in the Buddhist system, something almost like map of mind. And within the mind, map of emotion. Then the quite detailed explanation how to connect it each other. Mind also, no independent, everything interdependent. Like whole brain work, you see, although it's some portion of the brain carries some sort of important sort of rule, but actually everything interdependent, interconnected. So it's quite similar. So more explanation about mind in Buddhist tradition. Of course, in Hindu tradition also, those traditions where practice of samadhi mentioned and vipassana mentioned, you see the mental element naturally, you see the explanation about mental element there. And then also in Buddhism, also you see make differences or quite clear sort of analyzation about different level of mind. Mind, awakening state, dream state, deep sleep state, like that. You see, there are different levels. So this, when Buddha, I think all Buddhist tradition, the fundamental Buddhist teaching is Four Noble Truths. So first truth, true suffering. Then second, causes of that suffering. So this shows law of causality. Suffering not come accidentally, right? Or without cause, but due to its own causes, and suffering happens. And similarly, the third true cessation, permanent cease of suffering. In order to develop that, the fourth truth, path, is method. So through that way, the permanent sort of cessation of suffering can achieve. So this very idea, the very basis of the Four Noble Truths, teaching of Four Noble Truths, is based on law of causality. Suffering cannot be removed by Buddha's blessing. Enlightenment cannot be achieved through Buddha's blessing, but only through transformation of our own mind, like that. So in the courses of suffering, now these different emotions, karma, and karma means action. Here action, physical action, verbal action, mental action. These action, any sort of action which carried deliberately, then all these action which carried deliberately, there is motivation. Without motivation, no deliberately.
There is no intention.
Intention. So, on the motivation, now there are different motivation, like that. So that's the field of, the second truth, like that. Now one complicated thing, and also very important thing, that is about the truth of cessation of suffering. Now here, the concept of anathema, selflessness, and also absence of independent existence. These concepts is very much relevant, very much important, because the possibility of complete elimination of destructive emotion. Now here, firstly, there is differences, or there is gap, appearance and reality. The fundamental ignorance actually distorted sort of view about the reality. This ignorance very much based on appearances. So in order to make clear these mental attitude,
Perceptions.
Ah.
Perceptions.
Ah.
Perceptions.
Percept.
Perceptions.
Mental perception, which based on appearances. So in order to know that perception is ultimately ignorance, we have to know the reality. So here we have to know the differences or gap between appearance and reality. So this brings the concept of true truth. So Four Noble Truths based on true truth. The concept of Four Noble Truths, all Buddhist tradition, universally, also they accept the Buddhist teaching is fundamental Buddhist teaching. Then also the three training, Labasum. Three training, also universal. And out of three training, also the about Vipassana and the Samadhi and Vipassana, Changsha Sodungi.
37 aspects of the path to awakening.
All these are universal, same. Now about true truth. The concept of true truth is common, even ancient Buddhism and non-Buddhism. True truth, concept of true truth, there. Then certainly within the Buddhist different school of thought, the concept of true truth, there. But meaning is big different. Now here, true truth according Madhyamika philosophy, Madhyamika school of thought. So that means true truth, just two aspects of one object. One object, one side, relative truth. Another sort of side is
ultimate truth.
Ultimate truth. So that means emptiness or selflessness is the quality of an object, not its some independent. It is simply the
in other words, it's a property of the object rather than an independent entity of its own.
So now, there are two ways in order to transform our destructive emotion. One, conventional level. One,
ultimate truth.
Ultimate level.
No.
So now this, the 8 verses deal with that, ultimate reality, refer about ultimate reality. The rest of the 7 verses, mainly the conventional level, how to deal with negative emotion. However, the first sentence,
so, of course, in the first sentence, a stanza, there is a reference to may I hold them dear at all times. So there is a reference to the term I, which, of course, can open up to inquiry into the ultimate level of truth as well.
One time in India, one interfaith sort of meeting at Amritsar, where the Golden Temple, some American Sadaji, also few Sadaji here. So the Golden Temple there, you see, we had one interfaith meeting. So there are some Jewish teacher or a master there, some Muslim, some, of course, some Hindu, a lot of sort of Sikh practitioner, and then or some Christians. So all major religious tradition together as usual. So there one Sufi master. You see, he put in his speech. You see, he raised one concept that I very much was impressed. So that concept is the three questions. What is self? First question. Then second question, whether that self beginning or not. Second question. Then third question, whether there is end or not. He put three questions. And then according each tradition, is an answer for these three questions. So this, I think, very, very relevant. Now, when we refer self or I. So now the first question, what is I? What is self? This it creates two divisions. One division, the Buddhism, concept of selflessness, no soul theory, or Hindi word, anathema theory. That's only Buddhism. The rest of all major religious tradition except theory of soul, Atma. So when Buddhism state no self, no soul theory, quite often you see people confuse. If there is no self, here the very moment the self speaking and a lot of self you see listening, it is fact. And then moreover, as a Buddhism also you see accept the rebirth. If there is no self, no soul, then who take the birth? So that kind of questions, confusion. So the Buddhist concept of no self, no soul, is it meant the self or soul which something essentially separate from this body and mind. That kind of self does not exist. Self merely designated on the combination of body and mind. So therefore, we can easily call human self, human I, or the young person's I, old person's I. If I or self is something completely separate from the body and mind, then quite difficult to describe that self is human self. Or even female self, male self. You cannot say that. Self is something independent from the body. The different sex organ on the body, not in mind. Since self is something separate, then self, on the level of self, we cannot distinction. And also, I think on the self, something separate, something independent from the body, then also it's difficult to say monk. Monk very much related with robes and physical contact. So sometimes like male and female, or monk or lay people, say it appears these definition based on the body. and Buddhist, Christian, or the Islam, like a Buddhist, non-Buddhist, mainly refer mind, different faith. So if self, is completely separate from body and mind, then very difficult to make because of the differences.
No.
On the basis of independent I, then difficult, more complication. Of course, when you deny existence of the independent self, some complication there. But if you accept the separate independent self, more complication. Of course, that's from Buddhist viewpoint. Like that. So, in order to answer first question, what is self? The two groups of philosophy. One, non-self, that's Buddhism, and rest, soul, Atma. Then the second question, whether there is a beginning or not. Those traditions which accept creator, then there is beginning of the self. Then Buddhism, as well as Jainism, and some other ancient Indian tradition, Hindu tradition, no creator, then according them, particularly according Buddhism, the since self is designated on the combination of body and mind, because of body and mind. So body, the human self, designated on the human body. So obviously, this human body, when conceptual to take place, you see this happen. So this start. So as far as this body is concerned, that daily Luke Rikyun da Luke Zeyun Yiche. Rikyun lamna Yensu Jaga Gavne Cha. Zeyun lamna Dingasane. Zeyun Tama Shadya Yamariya.
So, from the Buddhist point of view, when we think about origin, in the case of an individual human life, the life of that particular individual human being began at the time of conception. But in terms of the material continuity of that body, then the material continuity can be traced way before the conception taking place. So one needs to make a distinction between the beginning of a particular lifetime and the beginning in terms of the material basis of that body. So from the point of view of the material basis of the body, then one cannot speak of a beginning.
For example, my body is sort of subtle element. The continuation of subtle sort of element is concerned, no beginning. Its own previous sort of course, previous continuation, go like that. Say it's several thousand sort of generations it come. Further goes at the level of subtle sort of element, mindless element. That even Big Bang, before Big Bang, the continuation still there. So beginningless. Now mind, the entity, mind and body is different. Mind is mere experience. Its very nature is Tome.
It's immaterial and unobstructive.
So they sort of speed, changing subtle, sort of a very deep, subtle level of self, changing movement very quick. But changing mind is much quicker. Something like this, a physical change, although very, very quick, very fast, momentarily changing. But compared with light speed, light still faster. So mental changing, even faster than light.
Mental movement, actually. Mental movement can be seen as faster than the speed of light.
So different entity, both according to law of causality, because obviously we experience changing. So changing took place because of nature of changing. Changing, there are two levels. Obvious changing, invisible changing. Obvious changing possible because of invisible changing. Change within year, month, week, day, hour, minute, second, like that. So everything which changing, basically momentarily changing. In order to, that level of momentarily changing, not necessary third force, but its own cause created that way. So, since mind is changing, so it must be causes. Cause here, two things. Substantial cause and causal.
Cooperative
Sort of cause. So, any sort of the mind or consciousness, in cooperative cause, there are external things also there involved. But it is substantial cause, must be same nature, same entity. So, mind's
substantial cause.
Or substantial cause must be mind. So that is the reason it is impossible to imagine beginning of mind. If you accept beginning of mind, then that first mind come through non-mind. So if one mind produced by non-mind, then today also it should be possible. So therefore, from the Buddhist viewpoint, there is no beginning of mind, as well as the subtle level, as far as the form body is concerned, no beginning. And particularly, no beginning of mind. So the self, which designates on the combination of mind and body, since these basis of self, no beginning, so self also no beginning. So that's Buddhist answer. So similarly, the third answer for third question also you say, now here in Buddhism, some Buddhist school of thought, when we reach nirvana,
nirvana without remainder,
then mind also cease. So automatically self cease. But the rest of except that school of thought, but the rest of the Buddhist school of thought argue there is no counterforce of existence of mind. So therefore, mind always continue. And when, of course, when individual enlightened, the mind is still there. So it remains forever. like that. 심지어는 이신을 올라서 저저들에서 다도 접을 좀 보셔 신님 진지 상담체.
So the first stanza we read, with the determination to achieve the highest aim for the benefit of all sentient beings, which surpasses even the wish-fulfilling gem, may I hold them dear at all times. So this stanza presents the practice of cultivating an attitude of kindness towards all sentient beings and holding them to be dear.
So here it mentioned, the genuine altruism, genuine sense of sort of concern of others' well-being. They very much involve deep respect, not feeling of pittiness. Your position a little higher and then look down. No, never. Deep respect, and with that, genuine sense of concern of their well-being. Then second verse is that children do some doa, rani shanle maortan choice.
So in the second verse, this earlier general point, it even made more specific by saying that when relating to others, it is important not to look at yourself as being superior. If at all, one should view oneself as inferior and lower than others.
Things are relative. Of course, we human beings compare one animal. Our physical is much sort of the precious, higher from that view. But then another viewpoint,
Another angle. No?
the animal, out of their ignorance, due to lack of intelligence, lack of ability to see consequences, long-term, short-term, their mistake, their wrongdoing, understandable. We, human beings, and particularly, now in this case, a Buddhist, they're practicing infinite altruism. And then, even small wrongdoing. From that viewpoint, you are worse than the animal. So from that viewpoint, if you look from that aspect, you really get the feeling,
So, in fact, so the point is that when you look at it from that angle, you can find a way in which you can see in some respect that you are actually lower than an animal. So, therefore, this point in the second stanza, to view oneself as inferior, really needs to be understood more in a contextual sense. That there are contexts in which one can see oneself being inferior to even animals as well.
I think here I want to share with you. Of course, so long feeling of self is there, there's some kind of self-cherishing always there. That's right. But then, half sort of, I'm teasing these people, or half joke. The human nature, part of human nature, the selfish there. So then, with human intelligence, that selfish should be wise selfish rather than foolish selfish. So now that's the point. If we look or see the other, something positive, and take sense of responsibility of their well-being, more concern about others, more compassionate attitude, that automatically bring inner strength, self-confidence. Through that way, your conduct can be truthful, honest, transparent, nothing to hide. Whereas when we have self-centered attitude, then some sort of desire, want to cheat, want to bully, want to exploit, then double face come. With that, the artificial things or hypocrisy automatically come. You can't be transparent. You can't be truthful, honest. That actually against very nature of human happiness. Human happiness, we are firstly social animal. Social animal, friendship is very essential. Friendship come on the basis of trust. Trust come honest, transparent, truthful. Hypocrisy, although the motivation, you want to be nice. So some of you sort of negative thing to hide and create artificial sort of positive. Actually, deceiving yourself. So, self-centered attitude is the key factor for unhealthy society. Honest, compassionate, respect others brings inner strength. That brings fearless. That brings honest, truthful, straightforward, transparent. So thinking this line, then the selfish there, but the selfish with reason, with wisdom, it's much better. So now here, sometimes we know the reason, we know the right thing, but still our destructive emotion sometimes will not let us carry that. Our intelligence knows this is right, but because of immense sort of
familiarity,
the destructive emotion develops as the obstacle. So therefore, we should not neglect about that. We must combat these destructive emotions. That's the third verses. Nyomoe gyulutene gyulutene yungu yabe indusane zoojik disigare yimidewa digi any shidan kyeong da teda tendra teda te chembe nyomo khanda khana inaya kore ngonju kyen ji yonde do sa ta nyomo shu chabu ji ke simbe khodo lo do sa do khawre 제상 그 nyomo kyayagi gyujin sa indusane yutab jadi shakyaji borisha.
So this third stanza explains the importance of having some kind of strategy to deal with negative and afflictive emotions as they arise, because they come in the way of us being able to exercise our wisdom. And with relation to afflictions, since they are mental processes and mental states, they also arise in dependence upon their causes and conditions. And within the causes and conditions, although they are immediate causes and conditions, but there are also more underlying causes and conditions as well. For example, in the case of anger and hostility, one of the underlying condition is a sense of dissatisfaction or frustration. Similarly, if you look at many individual negative emotions, they have their underlying conditions. So what is needed is a strategy that would allow you to deal with these emotions at this underlying state. Because when the emotions are fully blown, then it is very difficult to tackle them head on. So what is necessary is to have some kind of approach whereby you are able to catch them when they are at the stage of causation and germination, so that in some sense you are cutting their fuel out.
And the Bible knowledge, the cardinal sins as to what?
No. So, for example, so this is... So similar kind of practices can be seen in the teachings of other traditions. For example, in the Christian ethical teaching in the Bible, it speaks of avoidance of the 10 cardinal sins and so on. And these are similar kind of practices which aims at dealing with these negative, afflictive emotions and their expressions.
One my Muslim friend is explaining the meaning of jihad. It's not sort of offense to other, but another sort of meaning of jihad is combat,
struggle
within your own sort of negative emotion. Then now fourth verses. Rushing a bit, Simjan to do talk when no don't read that Travis never got a Jinzi show Saturday. Simjan Yamtawa. Chipana Nang about the Simbada. Then aid Nang sorrow. Yanachi criminal. Chip somebody to Sunday. Chip what the Dujaris in Pachi, Bishas of Chidua. Dimemche. Does it have the mixing that for Gurjutavia? Just sound of realia. Go social knowledge to Sul. Dauja, the casual.
So in the fourth stanza, we read that when I see beings of unpleasant character or unfortunate nature, oppressed by strong negativity and suffering, may I hold them dear, for they are rare to find, as if I have discovered a jewel treasure. This stanza is making the point that practitioners need to pay special attention to beings of a particular type of category, which generally in a conventional society people tend to either marginalize or neglect or ignore. So these would be, for example, like criminals who are convicts, which instead of discarding them, rejecting them from society, the practitioners of compassion must recognize their potential for correction, and also to recognize the social nature of ourselves, so that they are given a basis of hope and so on. So the main point is that the practitioners need to pay special attention to individuals of different categories.
So therefore, and some time back, I had some sort of discussion with some concerned people. They explained to me, those who are the prisoners in prison, see, they, some way, is the social reject
society.
And after they finishing sentence, you see, they very difficult to readjust.
Yeah.
So you see, we must give them some kind of sense of part of the society. That's, I think, very important. And as well as like aid patients or hip kasata, like that. So with that, like Amnesty International, you see, they carry, many years ago, you see, since then, you see, they carry some kind of movement, the abolishing death sentence. So these are this connection. I also one of the signatory. So, you see, even, you see, very sort of negative person, through education, through surrounding compassionate sort of atmosphere, there is always possibility, change, improve. So that is the real way to transform. That looks quite simple answer, but that is really now even you see people, more suicidal people also now, because we're becoming more and more. So that sentence not much sort of effective. So better, the sensible thing is educate them. The best thing, not word, but by action, compassionate attitude, compassionate action. Then there is a real possibility to change. So this is refer that. That is should the Dalai Lama chado 시골 나서 미리 경가랑을 내봐도 자가셔는 배워셔스. 랑이야 마외 마찬가지 되기 시와도 꿀어진데 좋나? 아니 미 샌던데 그거 자주부터 매매이나 소소 판관련 거래스. 좋습니다.
So in stanza 5 we read, when others out of jealousy treat me wrongly with abuse, slander and scorn, may I take upon myself the defeat and offer to others the victory. So this stanza explains how in certain challenging situations when you are unjustly accused of something or people abuse you with slander and scorn, unless the situation is related to the wider welfare of many other sentient beings, if it is simply a matter of your own case, then the advice is given here that the practitioners should not retaliate, but rather accept, offer victory to the other side.
Yeah. The Bible nalia, gospel nalia,
so this is the kind of similar teachings that we also find in the Gospels, for example, and the kind of advice on turning the other cheek when someone hits you on the other.
나중에 가나다게 팬다고 가나다게 팬딱배 팬딱고 암입니다. 팬다고 암. 디 뭐이 레고 디 교수도.
나온도.
가나다게 팬다고 암 러셔 건식이 시드미리 내셔나 신이다고 따셔스. 랑게 등가 파지 팬다셔. 다 팬에 내변절이나. 다 등원에서는 지당 친구한테 셔빈다 봐. 랑게 팬다셔 지를 다소 칠레 롱제시도 파지 래로야기 김전을 줘래. 다가는 신기 지금 랑게벨 라자스 지기 소 너와처들 이베네 고 마요 차대요. 레디네 전에 연배표돌이야. 더동 사고라도요. 대다게 제발을 때네 랑게 서버권배다 차진 상부 조소 세배 냠내 영향이 둘이 세배 냠내 영향이 주인도산에 대다라배 대부 세발라 계산 통역이 미치기 에네 서버권이야기 둘로 사고라도에 제부쳐버렸어. 사고라도야 아니 랑로 세배 냠내 그 롭준신이 계획신이 인산배 토안에 에네 그지쳐버려 송래.
So in stanza 6 we read that when someone whom I have helped or in whom I have placed great hopes mistreats me in extremely hurtful ways, may I regard him still as my precious teacher. So this explains that conventionally speaking, when someone whom you have helped responds negatively to you later on, from a kind of a normal social kind of, conventional, from the point of view of social convention and also legality as well, this is seen as totally inappropriate. It's seen as being an act of ingratitude on the part of the other. So you do have a kind of a case for responding in a negative way, but the suggestion here is for the practitioners not to give in to such instincts, impulses. Similarly, when someone in whom you have placed great hopes acts in a totally unbecoming way, and that also can be very hurtful, and also this violates our normal expected social norms. In these cases, although from a conventional point of view, there might be a case for responding in a negative way, but the advice here is for the practitioners of altruism to really not to give in to such natural impulses, but rather, in fact, to utilize that opportunity to further one's own practice. For example, a practitioner of altruism will be necessarily those who appreciate the virtue of patience and forbearance. And if you appreciate the value of patience and forbearance, which is the result and effect, then logically you also need to appreciate the value of the conditions that give rise to patience and forbearance. And here, these individuals, by acting in a negative way, destructive way towards you, is creating an opportunity where you are able to have the chance to cultivate and enhance your own patience and forbearance. So therefore, the practitioners of compassion and altruism really need to appreciate the opportunity they are providing, and in fact view them as your precious spiritual teacher.
Now, seventh. Donanga the give a pedamana gunlam, my $7 number shows. Tadi Gomuludud, Dana Jingini, Junju Zukudulia, and Juan Chambongati, Subject Gun Lapageta, Tate are Subject Gundi, long chatter, Dinanshi, Rangi, Luma Yusumbuti, Subject Gunlia, and Ulche, Subject Jajan, Samachi. What is
So in stanza 7 we read, "In brief, may I offer benefit and joy to all my mothers, both directly and indirectly. May I quietly take upon myself all hurts and pains of my mothers." So in this stanza, the author is presenting a set of practices which developed in the writings of Nagarjuna, and more specifically, in particular, in Shantideva's Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life. In both of these texts, where they give the analogy of the 5 great elements that exist in the world, since all the 5 great elements that exist in the world are there as a basis of sustenance, to be utilized and enjoyed and partaken in by all sentient beings, in the same manner, the practitioners of bodhicitta and altruism dedicate their entire being, body, speech, and mind, just as like the 5 great elements, to be a resource of benefit for all beings. And this is the practice being presented in this stanza.
Oda $7 number shows sayagi Singdigi, the Nijisungi. And Galega Tonling Miguchea. Tonling Miguchen, Musu Paru to Messea, the Yomarite in Rangi Ranchevan Zimbeta, Jinzing Kumudala, Tisha Nurfiachi. Said the Indu, Tonling Miguchea. Any remaining big, any Tonling, any Tinu Jambercha, so on Shingi, look Jung Chevakadulia, any Tonling Miguchea, Tisungiare.
So in this stanza, in the last 2 lines, we read the reference, "May I quietly take upon myself all hurts and pains of my mothers." This word, quietly, is often understood to refer to the Tonglen practice, the practice of receiving and giving, and where you receive and take upon yourself sufferings of others and offer to others joy and happiness. Although that kind of Tonglen meditation practice may not have any material effect on elevating the suffering of others, but it is a powerful practice that will definitely have immediate impact upon dismantling the solidity of your self-cherishing ego. And in this way, it is a powerful practice. And gradually, as you advance in your practice of Tonglen, it may also be, you may also reach a point where you may be able to correlate the practice of taking and giving in conjunction with the process of breathing in and breathing out.
Now it's what's the sentence? Tada kunja choje yo togwe cheme mabashins. Sa company would dig choje sin. Da pero chashana ngede ji tamsher cheche ji ngaraya ji nguyung sambe soro. Jene ngalia mi jigda doratan sambe soro. Nyanda yung sambe soro chebe ina jiti sheli gore. That didn't le pastor bege then a mark of chewadi stuck catch more. Jizimilla any control sugar cadulia and congada simuti me and Jizimilla kundili jara cadulia and we lungwen tade and hesitate Giranda. Perlozawa. Che Sungjun Nanche, Chigan Shuche, Sungjun Nanche, Yare. Any Sumupetanguji, which is in any Mizu Lamani, but Shujigan Shuche. Any Lama Lama Samuel, Manjashia to, Yeshia to, and this those. And Ajuni, Bango Panjan, the Kudres, or did the shoot. And it is in Millet. And that is the room to the pair or son yare. Tish segni, tig on the church other, nay, Yunguris, Yunguredi, Cheja to do, Achu Pambains. And it's a church, Nyamdola, that's also the Sang Singi, Dolon Chedadi, Chanda, nay, Junguris, Junguredi, is the Cheja to do, Achu Pambains, to Sondova. So in this similar to the Mashuba Church. Or that kind of thing, Shabani, or the color surgeon of a little cram or cacamer, just to get your
So in this final stanza we read, may all this remain undefiled by the stains of the 8 mundane concerns, and may I, recognizing all things as illusion, devoid of clinging, be released from bondage. So in this stanza, there is a reference to the phrase, 8 mundane concerns. And this is an important point. And the point being underlined here is that one's spiritual practices and altruistic practices one should ensure that they are not tainted by mundane concerns. To give you an example, for example, today, I'm giving you a lecture from this throne on this text. Now, even in the corner of my mind, there is some kind of thoughts that arises about that I might get money from this, or that as a result of me giving this teaching, people will see me as being, my fame will increase and so on. Even the tiniest thoughts like that arises, your activity has been tainted by mundane concerns. So this reminds me of a story from Jisu Milarepa's life. Once Milarepa's sister went to see him, and Milarepa was in his meditation cave, and the sister, seeing him, kind of almost semi-naked, like a beggar, nothing to eat, hardly anything to eat, no possessions, and she felt really sad because she had just seen the contrast between her own brother Milarepa with another famous Lama who was giving teaching in that village. This teacher was Parilozawa, and the Milarepa's sister said to Milarepa, what kind of Lama are you? I've just seen a real Lama who's giving teachings in a dignified manner from a high throne, in the presence of many students, and this Lama and his congregation have, tea offerings to be made, money offerings being made, whereas in the case of my brother, what kind of Dharma are you practicing, which makes you only more and more destitute? So when Milarepa's sister complained in that way, Milarepa responded to her, and his responses are in his song, Songs of Experience, which is really beautiful, poetic verses. But in essence, what Milarepa said was that, yes, I too can, if I want, conduct such teachings by sitting on higher throne and be in a dignified manner. But in my case, I've completely given up any form of Dharma activity that might be tinged with mundane concerns. Similarly, he said, I can, if I wish, get together a large, a congregation of wealthy donors so that there is an affluence in my community when it comes to provisions and so on. But again, I'm someone who has abandoned, forsaken, engaging in any form of activity that would be tinged by mundane concerns. So in the end, the sister finally, gave it, because she couldn't respond to Milarepa's replies, and she said, well, I don't know, but in any case, the fact remains, you are poor and destitute.
추균 규모를 시에벨 셴미 칭을 내주 쇼센다 송샤디 단 지진 최제 인연부터야 초진에 치즈로겠다 지진 최제가 로야데 치즈로겠다 다와 시세야데 메다고로 따고를 샴바 동네를 따고를 샴바 아니 메장원로 장을 샴바 아니 다음에로 따도 샴바 디시부디기 용기하래 대자와데 아니 저는 템버진베 덴징 왕기다 용기하래 나한테 인도산에 처신의 시주로 다와시 도다 치지말로 다와시부디 고기하래 디게디 고물루주기 안데 취니되는 소원난신 아니 미다와다 동야와다 아니 왜 가서 올 메상와도 사도 제디 규민식 처리스 초도 심 정을 해야 돼 아니 동리랑 심해가 인소는 신기 엔다 지진 최제 로이 년부배 싸워르디 치질로도 또고시 싸워 덴징 셔가 인도잖아 아니 단동 규모도 너나 규모도 소유물다 가다들이 땡중의 대권하니 다돈 될람디 하도다 다음에 또고시고 그래 동리 셔가지고 그래 동만이게 된 대양 아니 땡진 레버런 중에 전도 전에 아니 땡중게 대권은 시에가지고 그래 땡중게 대권은 시에베 권에 아니 말한소라 지금 최제가 참배 너나베 치단 나게 능식이 쉬어간다 강이나야 유용원에 라왕게 두버도 로로 쉽게 열었지 대다도 두버 매봐 아니 땡중 규모도 인 삼바 시바 전에 나야메도 규모도 시베 르 애니 제도고 냠는 게 장고 그래 스타디 송겨야
So the last two lines of that stanza reads that, and may I, recognizing all things as illusion, devoid of clinging, be released from bondage. So here, of course, concerns such as the eight mundane concerns and so on, how do we, address them? How do we combat them? So here, distorted, thoughts such as the eight mundane concerns and so on, really arise from a more underlying distorted perception of the world or outlook on the world. For example, in the Buddhist text, we speak of 4 types of distortions, and distorting, grasping onto things which are impermanent to be enduring, grasping at things that are in the nature of suffering to be pleasurable and happiness, and grasping at things which are essentially unclean and impure to be pure, and grasping at things which possess no selfhood to possess self-existence. So these are the four fundamental graspings or distortions of reality, and their counter force or antidote is to cultivate the corresponding wisdoms. For example, cultivating the wisdom of impermanence, cultivating the understanding the nature of suffering, and so on. And at the root of all of these distortions really is ultimately the fundamental ignorance, which is the grasping at inherent existence of phenomena. So here, just as Nagarjuna points out in his hymns to the ultimate expanse, where he says that within the teachings of the Buddha, the cultivations of insights into the nature of impermanence and nature of suffering and nature of impurity are preliminary practices where the ultimate antidote really is the cultivation of the wisdom of emptiness, insight into the absence of inherent existence of all phenomena. So therefore, this is the ultimate antidote that one needs to cultivate. And here, the key fact that one needs to gain is the understanding of selflessness, anatman, and the heart of the understanding of anatman is the understanding of emptiness. And emptiness here has to be a true realization of emptiness must take place where emptiness is understood in terms of dependent origination. So in other words, there is an equation between emptiness and dependent origination. Now, although this is the case, but in our own perception of the world, the way when we relate to the world, all of our perceptions is permeated or pervaded by a basic distortion where we tend to perceive things as possessing some kind of objective existence in its own right. And yet, the wisdom of emptiness exposes that this is a distorted perception. And so realizing that although in reality things do not possess inherent existence and objective existence, yet we, in our naive perception, we perceive things as possessing this. So therefore, from that point of view, there is an element of illusion in our perception. So therefore, one needs to not only understand emptiness, but also to be able to engage with the world with this awareness of the illusion-like character of phenomena. And in this way, one should engage with the world. So that's the point being made in this stanza.
So that's all. Now the short text, oral transmission, now completed. So the important is in our daily life, this reminds these points, particularly when we face some sort of situation where anger, jealousy, sort of frustration is about to develop, then think, reminds using these advice. So these common practice for all different practitioner and even non-believer. Is remind these points and further think. You yourself investigate. Say, for example, next 1 week, with help of mindfulness, remember, whenever you face some situation where this destructive emotion about to arise, then think, remember, if you find some useful or some helpful, then another 2 weeks, 3 weeks, month, go like that. Then your mind, your way of thinking, becoming more familiar these points, then real change will take place. So that's the way to improve our mental attitude. These destructive emotion is the real destroyer of our inner peace. So, in order to develop inner peace, tranquilizer or alcohol or just a picnic, just short temporarily. Thinking these lines, training your own mind, then inner peace really become part of your life. And your life become much more happier. Your mind becoming more calm. Then even you want to hit some of your enemy through calm mind, you can follow realistic approach. Then that hit more effective. Otherwise, it's more frustration, more anger, more jealousy, more frustration, then finally suicide. What use? Foolish, isn't it? So like that. So perhaps I want to, we all together read once. One. The Vietnamese, you read in Vietnamese, wang, 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 like that. The majority are English speaking, so read English.
Okay, let's read the stanzas together. With a determination to achieve the highest aim for the benefit of all sentient beings, which surpasses even the wish-fulfilling gem, may I hold them dear at all times. Whenever I interact with someone, may I view myself as the lowest among all, and from the very depths of my heart, respectfully hold others as superior. In all my deeds, may I probe into my mind, and as soon as mental and emotional afflictions arise, as they endanger myself and others, may I strongly confront and avert them. When I see beings of unpleasant character, oppressed by strong negativity and suffering, may I hold them dear, for they are rare to find, as if I have discovered a jeweled treasure. When others, out of jealousy, treat me wrongly with abuse, slander, and scorn, may I take upon myself the defeat and offer to others the victory. When someone whom I have helped, or in whom I have placed great hopes, mistreats me in extremely hurtful ways, may I regard him still as my precious teacher. In brief, may I offer benefit and joy to all my mothers, both directly and indirectly. May I quietly take upon myself all hurts and pains of my mothers. May all this remain undefiled by the stains of the 8 mundane concerns, and may I, recognizing all things as illusion, devoid of clinging, be released from bondage.
Thank you.